Hi, I'm Dr. Amy French. I'm the coordinator of the Humanities Learning Center, and I'm very excited today because I am with one of my friends and colleagues, Dr. Sharice Urbano. She is a biology professor at Delta College, and she is here to talk to us. She is, well, first off, let me tell you, she's one of my mentors. so, she's taught me a lot of what I know about online teaching. I consider myself kind of an old hat at this. I mean, I've been doing this for well over a decade myself, and she's been at it. She's an online pioneer. So this is why we're calling this wisdom from an online pioneer. We're also playing for the Delta Pioneers, if you guys didn't know. So thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to have you with us.
Well, thanks, Amy. It's great to be here, and I'm really happy to have this chance to share.
So when you started, you adopted online teaching when it was relatively a new format. What drew you to online teaching?
Well, to be honest, I was just feeding my novelty-seeking gene. As you know, I'm a geneticist, so I have identified over the years that I really do like to do new things. I like to use, I'm creative, even though I'm in the science STEM area. I love the creativity of doing new things and taking on new challenges. So I really was feeding that in part. That new challenge was especially appealing to me. I guess I'm a risk taker. If you've ever seen me whitewater rafting, you know that, yeah, really I'm a risk taker. And I had been looking for something meaningful to do with a sabbatical leave. So I wanted to apply for a sabbatical leave before, I got to the end of my career, and I wanted it to be something meaningful. So it was about the same time that online teaching started kind of taking off with the MOOC courses. So those are massive open online community courses that are offered through Harvard and MIT and whatnot in those early years. So I wrote my sabbatical leave report and said I'd just like to explore whether teaching quality online science classes with labs is even possible.
So would you share with us how you translate biology for students in an online course? I know how I do history, but biology, now that's a different beast.
Yeah, well, it depends on the class. So the first one that I developed in the sciences after doing the Exploring Diversity class was Biology 111, the online lab class. And so that class is built around a routine that I call the learning cycle. So I'm going to share that in a minute with my screen. But before we go there, let me just say that it does depend on the class. So the other class that I might mention if we have time is Bio 199, which is my biology, genes, and behavior class, which is an honors, a cross-listed honors class, which emphasizes critical thinking. So in that class, the audience is different. The emphasis in the class and focus is slightly different. And so, and there's no lab. So that class is designed very differently. So how I design it depends on the class and therefore the audience. So for the non-majors in Bio 111, I decided early on that the class needed to be very engagement oriented, student centered. And for the Bio 199 honors critical thinking class, it's more of a seminar style. So let's just jump in.
Yeah, let's. I'm excited, and I'm sure viewers would love to see this.
Well, thanks. Let me see if I can get to the right spot here. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And I put it into a PowerPoint so it would be easier. All right. So if you can see that, I designed the course around a learning cycle, as I mentioned before. And this is basically what I share with my students in the first orientation. Actually, I start that orientation a week before the class starts with a little online video that they can view. I send them a link via email. And I'm telling them how to master biology concepts using a weekly routine. And so that weekly routine, you can see, Bio 111 and all the science courses are very content rich. So how do you get all that content across to students? And we start out with some science literacy. They can use the Smart Book, which is part of McGraw-Hill. I'm using McGraw-Hill Connect that has a whole suite of online tools that I think are just very well done. Or they can do a science literacy, compare and contrast and give examples. If they don't like to spend all their time on the computer, maybe they just want to write out those compare and contrast and examples and submit those for their homework. So that's part of their homework. I also provide video lectures. I decided early on that talking head with me and the tools we had at the time, which is like 10 years ago at Delta, for recording video lectures weren't nearly as slick as some of the tools that were already out there, or tools that other people were using and videos that they were producing. So I use Bozeman, who's an award-winning science teacher who has a whole entire channel that covers all the biology concepts, the survey in a survey course, which is what Bio 111 is. And then there's crash course YouTube videos that you could use for students who maybe just need a refresher. Maybe they've had a really strong high school biology course, and so crash course works for them. Bozeman is a little slower and more linear, so I recommend that to the students who haven't had a real strong background in biology, and they get to choose. So I give them those options, and those are links built right into my e-learning site.
Can you show us your e-learning site?
Pardon me?
I think some of our viewers might like to see your e-learning site. Can you show us what it looks like?
Sure, yeah. So let me just whip through this real quick, and then we'll go into the e-learning site and look at some of it. I think we'll go into the e-learning site and look particularly at this activity.
Okay, cool.
The web activity, which is on the discussion board, and this is where I build community. I think that's another important thing to do in an online class, is build community. Then they have an active learning piece near the end of the week, a quiz to test their knowledge, and of course lab reports, because we're in a science class. So I think what I'm going to have to do to go to my e-learning site is stop this share.
Okay.
And come back in again and go to e-learning. Now, do you see the e-learning page?
Yes, we do.
All right. As I said before, just a real quick overview here. This is Principles of Biology. I have two sections now, 810 and 820. And I usually give them an introduction every week as to what we'll be doing. So here's what we're working on this week, week 9, I'm calling it. In our class, we're doing genetics, patterns of inheritance. And I said I would pop into those discussions.
Yes.
Okay, so building community, I think, is really important. And this is also where I get to observe student learning. So we're just gonna kind of go into a sample one of these. Let's go into this one. So this particular week, they're doing a Biology Today article review, which is what I call it. They're actually going out and searching, and I give them some links for like Science, Scientific American, Discover magazine, and some other sources, where they're going to actually post a discussion board, find an article that relates to the topics that we've been working on, and then give the title, the author, the source, and a summary and their personal reaction. And so they do a really good job on this assignment. If we go in here, this is why I love the discussion boards, because here's where I get to know my students just as good, if not better, than I would have in a face-to-face class, because every single one of them gets to talk every week.
Neat.
And here's some of the things that they're saying. So we're talking about identical twins here. And one of the things that I've built into this discussion board is to have them adding additional links. So the beauty of online teaching is you can send them all over the world with links to everywhere. And I'm not the only one that's including links. They're also including links to other sources and then responding to each other. And you can see if you build in the scaffolding for these posts that they do a really good job of sharing with each other. So this is peer-to-peer learning or peer-to-peer sharing, which I really appreciate in online learning. I get to observe them teaching each other, basically.
Very cool. I'll let you get us out of the share screen. And so I'm sure our viewers are excited. I think like a lot of viewers probably are sitting at home and they think they might want to take an online class. They aren't sure, they maybe are somebody who might be a non-traditional learner thinking maybe they'd like to take a class or interested in something. And I think it's good that you're showing them, here is what it looks like, because we don't know what we don't know. And that is the scariest part of returning to college, is we don't know, or going to college for the first time. We don't know what we don't know. So you viewers at home just got to see a little bit about what an online class looks like if you're thinking about that. Now, Dr. Urbano, what piece of advice would you give to a student who's taking an online class?
Well, the first thing is to make sure that they are ready for online learning. So you have to have the technical bandwidth at your home, computers that is a computer that's reliable. And then the biggest thing is time management. I think the first week is critical, and then communicating with your professor. So if we talk about time management, I've kind of built that into my course. It's sort of built into the learning cycle. So what I try to tell my students right up front is to block out 2 to 3 hours per week where they sit down and dedicate it to Biology 111. And in Biology 111, that happens 4 times a week. And the students are like, wow, this class takes more time than any other class. It's like, yes, it's a 4-credit science class, and they always take more time. That's why we have 6 contact hours if you're face-to-face. So I try to, workload is important. So students understanding the workload right up front, and instructors being very clear as to what their expectations are in that workload, I think
That's
is
such
very.
good advice. I think you gave me that advice when I started out because I always give the same advice. I carry around a planner and I always tell my students to do the same thing. I said, at the beginning of every week, write down all the work that you're going to have to do for all your classes. So I think that's great advice.
Exactly.
What
You
advice
can
would you
also
give
build that
someone
in.
like me, a professor teaching an online course? For those of our viewers, you know, Charisse and I, we're OGs. We've been teaching online for a very long time. So the pandemic did not catch us unaware. We were already in our zone, and we were easily able to transition, and we were able to help our colleagues to some degree transition too. So we jumped into teacher mode. Honestly, both of us, I think, we both spent a good deal of time helping our colleagues transition. Um, but for a lot of our colleagues, this was their very first time when we had to transition a year ago in March to virtually over one weekend. We were told, take your classes online. And so a lot of our colleagues took their classes online for the very first time. What advice would you give professors who are teaching online now, who are saying, um, they have the time to think now and they're thinking about taking a class online and they're maybe developing something, or they're thinking about developing a class online? What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, there's a lot of advice I would probably give them, but here's the first thing. Everybody's had a taste of online teaching and learning now via COVID. But I would say that, and I have to give compliments to all of my colleagues who were forced into teaching online for the very first time. And it truly was forced. Compliments that they survived this past year. The next step is that really the best way to teach online, just kind of scrambling every day from day to day to put this stuff up there on D2L. And so the biggest piece of advice is consider this question: what teaching methods that I use in the classroom will convert equally well to an online learning environment? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. What works well that I do in the classroom online? And that was the first question I asked when I was designing, all my online courses. And my answer to that, because I was a PowerPoint queen for a lot of years, I'm teaching science and it's very visual. And I had tons of PowerPoints and I didn't convert any of them to anything that I use online. That was my choice. I decided that I needed to be more student-centered. I needed to be more student-centered in my teaching online. It needed to be it needed to be engaging to the students. It had to be more interactive than a talking head or a PowerPoint overview. That was just my choice. So I guess the first thing is, what are you most comfortable with and what will work equally well online? I found that student-centered and engagement-oriented is the best way to go in online teaching. So the next thing you need to decide is that flexibility that you're now going to get as an instructor, that flexibility of not being tied down to a schedule or a place. Is that worth your time investment? Because there's an awful lot of investment up front. Converting what you've done in the classroom or what you choose to do in an online environment to a digital format, and then making sure that all the technology works, there's a huge time investment up front. But once that time is invested, and you've got things tweaked, and I always tell people it takes about 3 years to do good, solid curriculum development. The first year you're just putting it together and designing it, and then you're tweaking it based on student feedback. So with that in mind, do you have 3 years that you want to invest in developing a really high quality online environment where students are the center of attention and the ones that are actually doing most of the actually put the responsibility in the hands of your students? That's kind of a cool thing too, because from my experience, most of them figure out how to excel. And the ones that don't, my other piece of advice for students are figure out in that first week if that's going to work for you. So once you sign up for an online class, that first week is very critical. I mean, get in there and explore the entire course site, make sure you understand how it's organized, make sure you understand the workload, make sure that's going to work for you in your learning mode for that particular semester. And if it's not, you can still get all your tuition back. You just have to do it in the first 7 days, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, well, lastly, this has been very helpful, I think, for a lot of people, both on either end, those who are looking to maybe, who are thinking, I kind of liked this. I might want to stick around and teach this way some more. And those who are saying, I kind of, I heard a lot of good things, maybe they've been watching people at home. How many, I can tell you, I myself have had a lot of interested people looking over their students' shoulders at home. And I think we're gaining some interested followers who are watching students at home. And there are other students who are saying, I really do like online learning, and I finally got around to liking it. So what are the best aspects of it? Our last question of our interview. What would you say, going on a high? What are the best aspects of online teaching?
Oh boy. Well, I tell you what, Amy, this has been a great way to kind of taper off my career. I spent 20 years in the classroom and some 10 years before that at other institutions. So 30 years teaching face to face. And I was really just ready for some new challenges and some novelty to feed that novelty seeking gene. And so, the last 10 years of teaching mostly online has been just exciting for me. New challenges, new ways of teaching and learning. I love the flexibility of the schedule. I'm kind of not a routine person, even though I say you got to do that learning cycle, which is routine. I am not a routine person in my daily lifestyle. So the flexibility of schedule, the flexibility of location. I love to travel. This doesn't slow me down. I still teach. I've taught from Mexico. I've taught from Kenya. I've taught from lots of different places. As long as you've got Wi-Fi, and you need to make sure that that's going to work. It also has taken me back to my first love, which was coaching. So online teaching is more like coaching rather than teaching. So you're kind of setting up drills or setting up student engagement where they can do the learning, and you're the coach, you're the motivator. You set up the schedule and kind of observe and then motivate and give feedback. So that part I really love. I also love online analytics. This must be the science part of me, but there's all kinds of online analytics built into both e-learning and my Connect site. So I use on Connect, there's an at-risk student analytic button that you can use that actually pulls up students and their level of engagement in the class. And so then I can email all the ones that are not highly engaged in the class. Right in week 1 and 2 is when I start doing that to make sure that they're in the right course. And so there's the big thing. As long as you can keep up with the technology challenges, which are, technology is a challenge. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the time it works. It's getting better. I'll tell you that much too. It is getting better. But as long as you can keep up with that and you're very proactive and student-centered in your approach to teaching, I think it's a wonderful thing that gives access to students. One thing I did want to say is it gives access to students who needed this sort of format to continue their education. So for example, I've had many single mothers tell me that they would have been stopping out of their education for the next 2 or 3 years if they didn't have access to online classes. I've had a military students, one that was shipped out to Iraq and took the lab kit under his arm and got on the plane and went to Iraq. And I tried to talk him out of it because I didn't know if that was going to work. And it was one of my first semesters teaching. And I tried to talk him out of it. He said, if I don't do this, I'm going to wait two years to get my degree. And I don't really want to wait 2 years to get my degree. This is the only class I need. And he goes, I'll do a good job. And he did a great job. It was amazing. and other students that, just wouldn't be able to, they need this flexibility. I had one from a student from Detroit that signed up and he said, I haven't been able to complete my degree. I've been trying for 5 years, but I can't get a science lab class that fits my schedule because I work for MDOT and they send me all over the state of Michigan. And the only way I can finish this degree is to take an online science class. And I'm like, I'm your girl. I'm your instructor. So, that's been very rewarding.
Well, Charisse, I thank you. I thank you for being my friend, for being my colleague, for being my mentor. I thank you for the decades that you have put forth to Delta College, to student success, to online learning. Online learning does, and it really speaks to the community college mission. We meet our students where they are, and we take them where they need to be. And that's what online teaching does. But more so, we're not nameless. You can see two people right here who are friends in real life, who know each other, who are real people, who respond to students and who have real responses and real lives, and real degrees and real expertise in their fields. And that matters too, to that kind of online teaching. And in that, we are able to give that to the students. And I think that too, comes across, and Charisse was able to help me understand that, and help me grow as a professor when I was a junior colleague many moons ago now. And so I thank her. She is retiring, and I will miss her greatly. Though I am lucky that I will still have her in my life, so I don't have to worry about saying goodbye to her. But and hopefully I will be able to travel with her sometime in a post-pandemic world. So
awesome.
So
just one more thing, as you talk about sharing and, the fact that I am leaving, I was asked to put on a couple of workshops at the beginning of the semester, one by my, for the science division and another one for the FCTE. And so in doing that, I created a shared Google Drive folder. And this shared Google Drive folder is called Science Virtual Workshop, but it really has a lot of things in about discussion board rubrics and first day online teaching. So it would work for any kind of class. And I'm happy to share that link with anybody who might be interested. So maybe the easiest way to do that I could either give you that shared link, but I think you have to set it up as shared. So if people want to email me, okay, I'd be happy. Anybody interested in looking at some of those rubrics and other things that I've designed that I just threw in that shared Google Drive folder can feel free to email me.
I will put her email address in the description box below. And everybody who's watching knows what I mean, but there's a description box below, so I will put her there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this windy afternoon. If any of you have heard, I mean, I'm very surprised that our Wi-Fi both stayed on, and I was very happy. So thank you, Dr. Urbano, for joining us this afternoon, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Good to see you.